My first personal life philosophies is creating your own reality. You only live once, so, get out there and do it. And I know that might be privileged to say. Not everyone has a friend's father who is building a house at the right moment that lets you live there, right? Lets you change your career. Some people have, again, finances and, all kinds of things. And it can be really, really tough. But I really think that always try to look at every situation. I'm a hacker at heart, right? And to me, a hacker is someone who subverts the dominant paradigm, doesn't go along with what everyone else is doing. Always questioning what's happening. Really asking yourself, is this where I want to be now, or where can I be instead?
Today, I'm here with Alex Grande, who is the founder and CEO of Recognize, where he uses behavioral science and gamification to help organizations influence performance, motivation, and decision-making at scale. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks, Jana, for having me.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to just jump right in and talk about, this pivotal moment that you had in your life where you made a decision that changed your trajectory.
Definitely. I mean, I've had a few of them. I feel like it's important for me to live in different places. It's almost like important for you to live different lives. Don't be afraid to make that transition. And for me, I mean, kind of setup was, I just saw the possibility of being an entrepreneur. I saw the possibility of how you can be your own, you can create your own residual income, and using technology to do that, where you could start without any money, is incredibly intoxicating for me, right? Rather than having to, the fear, the risk of starting a brick and mortar compared to a software company, it was much more, I have an appetite for that rather than going into debt, right? I can use my time. And so because of that, I had gone up and down. I had kind of a circuitous early career, but I was working in technology, and I was working at a design agency. And it was 2000, I think late 2008, 2009. And do you want me to go into the story of how it went? Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Um,
So, yeah, let's talk about like what were you doing before you, came across this decision, and even a little bit if you were happy there, or
yeah.
were you content, and that kind of framing, that would be great.
Yeah. Well, backing up a little bit, I had a big transition in my teen years. I was on Ritalin for many, many years on ADD, medication. And when I stopped taking that, my life completely changed. And I realized, that's when I switched my major going into college from computer science to psychology, because of this realization, that I kind of epiphany I had. And then after college, I kind of did a few different things. I taught English in Korea. I tried sales. And when that wasn't working, I made the right move to actually go live in the woods and do construction for my friend's dad. And I lived in a tent, and I learned web development. And I came back out of the islands in North Washington and got a job in web development. I made a number of websites that were, fake businesses that I used as my portfolio to get my first job, and being a hustler basically. And then I had a really, really cool company, design agency in Seattle. It was kind of a dream come true for me. But even though I was in this kind of perfect position and perfect place, I saw a massive possibility with mobile, and I can go more into that unless there's any more.
Well, yeah. So I guess I'm curious. It sounds like you've been willing to leap to try different things, and so maybe your risk threshold is a little high. Can you talk to me a little bit about what makes you comfortable, you know, pivoting from one thing to another?
Well, I believe very strongly in mitigated risk, and I think I read that in Ray Dalio's book Principles, where you don't just jump right in. I know I'm inspired by the story of Nike. I think he was an accountant, and he started Nike part time. He paid $5 something for the swoosh logo, right, from an art student. That kind of mitigated risk. I've always been very attracted to that. I believe that anyone listening to this, if you maybe transition out of role, or maybe you've been part of a layoff, that is a great time to try to start a business. And there's never been a better time now. Here in the Seattle area, Microsoft, Amazon, they're laying people off, and people worry, about property value and a lot of things. But what I'm excited about is if those folks can then start a company using AI, theoretically, we could see a lot of powerful job growth here in the Seattle area are willing to hire people. People are willing to take that step between each role to start a company. Start it while you're still employed. That's what I did. Every time I started a company, I either had savings from when I taught English in Korea, or I was already working somewhere and I planned ahead, so that when I was going to quit, I already had that savings, I already had started something. It's really, when I started my current business, Recognize, I spent 2 or 3 years part time working as a consultant, 20 hours a week, 30 hours a week. And that allowed me to start the business. And it was really interesting how these kind of synchronicities happen. I had a contract with Uber, I had a contract with another company. I was making good money and I was working on Recognize. And then both those contracts ended the same week.
Mm.
And backing up, my business partner and I, we both got our solid contracts. I was working for an online therapy company. He got a job at Berkeley, same day, right? There's these weird things that happen when you put yourself out there in the universe. But when I lost both those contracts, yeah, I was back to drinking discounted coffee and oatmeal, right? I was down and out. My rent was high. I was in the Bay Area. It was like $3,000 a month for rent at the time. But that plane took off, and we were able to start it without any investment or friends and family around. And that was because we spent 2 years already building, 2, 3 years already building up somewhat of a customer base. We're making $50,000 a year. That was my salary. I took the money that we made,
Mm.
and my business partner kept working at Berkeley for another year. And then we were able to both go full time, and now we have about 20 people on the team. So there's ways to do businesses without, and now with AI, it's absolutely incredible. I mean, I challenge people to go to AI today and ask, what would be the easiest business for me to start right? And see what.
Mm. Yeah, go scour the Reddit forums and say, what are the major pain points in this industry? Yeah, there's a lot of great ways to leverage AI to explore that. And so, how was we're about to talk about this decision that with
Yeah.
mobile, but you were at a company that you already own doing web development, and you said it was going well. Like how well? Like
Yeah, no, I didn't own the company at that point.
oh, okay.
I did start an agency. That was my first kind of business, was web development.
Mm,
And then I took a job at an agency that was really established. I got to work on projects like Nintendo and Target and EA, and it
mm,
was really a lot of fun. Fantastic culture, which actually partly inspired me to start the business I have now, to help companies have great culture like they did. Really was, I don't know what happened. I just was, I don't even think I even had an iPhone yet. My friend, I got to use them with my friends, and I just started thinking about it more and more. And one day I was with my girlfriend on the beach in the summertime, and quite honestly, we took some LSD, and it was a monumental moment for me where I realized, oh my gosh, mobile is the future. If I double down on this, I'll be successful. There's no way I cannot be successful, either really, really successful or moderately. I don't know, but there's a future here, and I can take advantage of that right now. So I talked to my best friends at the time. He's a genius. He's a centric genius. My friend Jana, and he's started a number of companies since then and been very successful. And I just said, mobile's the future. I had an epiphany, and he doubled down with me. And again, another synchronicity. The company I was working for, this was 6 months later, the week I'm planning on quitting, they had a reorg, and it wasn't going to be advantageous for the entire front end web development team. They basically told the web development team that you can't do half the things you do now. You can only do the boring part. So, I quit, and they all thought I quit because of the reorg, but actually I've been planning for 6 months to quit, and went out on our own. And Jonah and I ended up having kind of some different opinions on what it meant to go mobile. There's a lot of different
mm.
choices. So we kind of did a hybrid. We did agency work. We did web development for Fortune 500 companies. We did a BlackBerry app. This is how long ago this was.
Well, I guess before you jumped into that, though, like, I guess there's a reorg. So, what were your real options, I suppose, at that point? You could go and start this new company, but what other options did you have?
Well, yeah, I mean, up until that point, my role there was getting easier and easier for me, and there didn't seem, the speed at which I want to move is a bit
Mm,
faster than other folks. So I wasn't, seeing the progression in the company that I was excited about. It is an agency, so it's kind of like you're doing websites. You're not like building a SaaS business that keeps growing and new longer opportunities. They can only take on so many clients. Upper mobility wasn't as strong. My job was getting easier and easier. I could do my job in a few hours, and I was getting bored. I was getting complacent. And then when they said that I wasn't going to be able to do, a lot of the programming that I was doing before. I mean, they had a huge missed opportunity in that situation for them. But basically, it was going to be, it was basically going to be my whole team was being demoted essentially. So it was
Mm.
an incredible time to quit, and I was lucky to have a savings because even if I didn't have everything lined up, I probably would have quit anyway.
And do you think did you consider at all during this time getting another job, or are you like, "Nope, I'm good with my savings and I feel comfortable, taking this new risk?"
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't have, I'm sure it's a lot harder if you have, student loans. I went to state school, it was affordable. I went to community college. I didn't have any student loans because I did college very affordably, and I didn't have a family. To me, it was very low risk. Um,
Mhm.
Biggest risk was getting close down to nothing in savings, borrowing money from a friend or family, and but what I ended up just deciding that my point was to spend 6 months trying to get something going, and that was my kind of my second go at starting a business, really.
And so before you made the leap, did you think about, like, what success looked like? Did you visualize what that would be if you were successful? And if so, what was that?
Well, it was very much of a collaboration, and I really encourage people if you haven't started a business before to get a business partner. There's a great book called Slicing the Pie, which can help you not give 50% of your business away to somebody who ends up not showing up anymore. But it was very much a collaboration on what we wanted to do. We wanted to build apps, and we did some tests on some early apps, and then we just ran the numbers on if we have X number of apps doing X number of things, we can have X number of advertising dollars. It was very much an equation on that side, and I think that's still true today with a lot of types of businesses. If you can do some early tests, use lean startup, use AI to generate landing pages and run meta ads to it, and see what idea gets the most pre-orders or the most signups to get access. You want to do what's the easiest. There's so many business books on how to sell strategic and all this stuff. But if you start off with something that's hard to sell, you're gonna have a hard time regardless, no matter how smart or savvy you are. But yeah, my goal really was to I always have these kind of basic goals, and then go from there. My goal was to have one client, one web. One of my visions was helping companies convert from a website to a mobile website. At that point, no websites were optimized on the phone.
Mm.
So I just wanted to get one client, but Jonah had an idea of how to get $10,000 a month. And so through advertising, through the ads, so we just collaborated, and we trusted each other by having kind of a dual business in mobile.
Well, I'd love to actually hear a little more about, I haven't read that book, but how you landed on who your partner is. I've always said it's like a marriage, um, like you got, this person that you're working with becomes probably one of the closest people to you, and you're doing things day in and day out, having to solve problems and work together. And so it can be really good or really bad. So how did you land on your business partner?
Well, yeah, that's it's really tough. I mean, a business relationship, I think, is a lot harder than um, even a marriage. In some ways, it's harder. Depending on if there's kids or not. But there's no romance with a business partner. There's no fun part really. It's all grind. Obviously, if you start making a lot of money, then that's great. That's fantastic. That's what you want to see, or you get the prestige of that killer client and that marquee client. But yeah, I've always looked to my friends who are basically have the kind of complementary skills. They are hard workers, right? They're creative. You can kind of have yin yang. The kind of you can have intelligence, you can have wisdom, and there's kind of it's nice to have both. You're gonna have that wisdom, but also that kind of strength and smarts. But yeah, no, it's hard. I mean, Jonah and I worked together on that company for about a year, and in the end, we were so sick of each other. I don't think we spoke for 4 years after that. We're back to being, I find your best friends are always going to come back, even if you have a fight. It's the friends you just don't feel that connected with that you never really,
Mm.
Jonah and I are good friends again, and we talk business and things regularly. But it can be very, very taxing business relationships. I think if you can go it on your own, it can be easier on the decision making tree. But by having someone work with you, you can move twice as fast.
Yeah, there's definitely, something to be said for complementary skill sets. I mean, a business I exited out of, had grown to maybe about 5 million with just me. But what was really missing was somebody who was well connected and that sales type person. And once that we brought that person on board, we went from, 5 million to 15 in like 18 months, because it was just about having the complementary skill set. My job was to integrate the company, keep it on the rails, make sure that we're getting the infrastructure laid out, as we're scaling. And his job was out there selling, and it made all the difference in the world.
Wow, I want to learn more about that. Maybe for another time.
Yeah, no, it was a venture for sure. So, I guess just this is intriguing me though about the partner. So, anything in retrospect that you would have set up differently going into it that you learned from that experience?
Well, maybe I can come into that a roundabout way. But right off the top of my head, I think that if we had put more effort into having some kind of mentor. Today we have a business coach. If we need to, we have a business therapist that my business partner and I can go to. She's not cheap, but she is incredible. And I've learned a lot on how to communicate from her that I apply to my personal life as well, which now I have very much higher standard of communication. I try to be sympathetic with people who haven't put that training in, but that would have been really nice. That could have really helped us. I think yeah, we could have possibly made a lot more money from that business if we had maybe a mentor or someone to help kind of mitigate the conversations or help. We can get so set in our ways. Luckily, I've never had a situation where people just don't work. And
Mm.
it's a huge problem for people who, or another example, I worked at this great co-working space in San Francisco called Runway, and a lot of very smart people and very successful people come out of that space. But I remember this, but also a lot of disasters. I remember this boyfriend girlfriend started a company, and they would just be screaming at each other in the office. And then it came to find out that one of them was actually embezzling money out of the business.
Oh, wow.
It was just an absolute disaster. I don't know how you can plan for these things, but that's why I just love this idea of, like again, slicing the pie where you both start off with zero equity, and then you have to do certain things to earn the equity.
Mm.
Either you put money into it or time or ideas, but again, it's not, you don't just start off 50-50. With my current business partner, started off my idea, he joined. I found an old document recently going through my papers, and it was 75% me, 25% him. And then, I mean, he was putting so many hours in and started right from the beginning that we just switched to 50-50,
Mm.
which, can be actually some of a problem depending on the situation again, because but yeah, I think even regardless of the percentage, if everyone's putting blood, sweat, and tears into it, they want their opinions heard. And that's where things can break down and that's where a business coach can help. There's this company called SaaS Academy. We pay a subscription to them. They have a number of coaches and meetups and things like that we can go to. If there's any problem, let's just schedule a meeting with SaaS Academy, meet with one of their coaches, and somebody will be set straight.
No, that's a fantastic idea. Part of the ecosystem we're trying to create is exactly kind of that, where you actually rely on psychology tools and outside support to be able to work through whatever's blocking your way. So I love that. I'll have to look into it. So you were working at this company, you had this vision that mobile is the future. You found somebody who bought into that vision as well. How much analysis did you guys really do before taking, the leap and saying, "Nope, we're going all in on this"?
Very little. It was just so obvious at that point because, I mean, unlike, let's say, crypto, where it's like, is the blockchain really going to change everything? I'm suspicious, whereas with, I think with AI or even more so mobile, it's like, wow. I mean, the app store, everything was, remember at the time, it was $1 an app. Everything was $1 an app. And there's always success stories of people building, things that are, ridiculous to incredibly impactful. And so we didn't really think we needed to do much analysis at all. We just needed to get started. And so the first thing Jonah did was he actually, at the time, there was a technology called PhoneGap. So we were web developers. We did not know Java. I actually have effective Java. I have now read it. But at the time, we didn't know Java or how to build actual software other than websites. But there was things we could use to do that. And so Jonah built as an example of what I was out doing kind of sales, trying to negotiate in relationships and opportunities from a kind of client agency perspective, and in being in Seattle and having connections and people, were looking for that kind of work. So I was getting successful there. And Jonah, he built a Einstein quote app of all
Oh.
things, just very basic. And then he built a couple other ones like that, and just to see what were the numbers, what were, and put ads on it. And that's what allowed us to do the math. And then we built about 20 different types of apps, Android theming apps at the time. And we built, again, some quote apps. We built a news reader, an RSS news reader. Living in Seattle, I made a ferry app because you couldn't use the ferry schedule. You still can't use the ferry schedule on mobile web. You still have to download an app or zoom in still today. But I built the first ferry app, or one of the first ones, and they all kind of made a little bit of money. But then one app got featured in the App Store,
Mhm.
and then within overnight we had 1 million downloads, and that set up a lot of our revenue. Just that it was kind of that, like they say the 80-20 rule. I think of it more like a 90-10 rule. And so that one app was our 90% of our revenue, even though we put 90% of effort into other apps. And that
Mm.
kind of awoke in me the possibility of the numbers game, like trying different ideas. Right now, even today, I made a number of landing pages with ChatGPT. I've been doing surveys. I've been doing our webinars, and I always do surveys with our demographic. And I ask questions. It's helping me kind of figure out what kind of maybe possible businesses to open up. We've been meeting with customers and prospects and doing interviews. And next week, I'm going to be launching 3 landing pages of additional products for Recognize, very lean startup style, right? And
Mm.
so, it's almost like being an entrepreneur as an entrepreneur in my own company. And you got to, I'm really inspired by Intuit. They're always trying to disrupt themselves. And if you're not going to disrupt yourself, well, your competitor's going to. So you never be complacent is basically the lesson there.
You when you're mentioning this, you trying a bunch of different things. It reminds me of Jim Collins talks about first bullet holes and then cannonballs. So the idea is go test things that are low, low difficulty or low effort, and seeing what works, and then you launch a cannonball. So when you had that really successful app, did that change your trajectory at all and what you were focused on, or did you continue testing more and more apps?
Well, actually, I very much regret not doing exactly what you just said on the former, which is doubling down on that one app. Do more of what you were doing well.
Mm.
It's definitely a lesson I take today, but I just didn't want to be known. I guess I was being a bit of a maybe a snob a bit. I didn't want to be known for theming apps for Android. Jonah was like completely comfortable doing that. I wanted to be known for something much more meaningful and interesting than that. That's when I doubled down on the RSS reader because I thought news was much more interesting, but it flopped, and then we ran out of money. But that was actually a great opportunity because then I moved to San Francisco, where I always wanted to live, and it allowed me to get a fantastic job by taking that 8 months or a year to be an entrepreneur.
And so, what do you think when you really boil it down to the core of who you are? What do you think drove the decision to make that leap and start that company?
Well, yeah, one of my personal life philosophies is creating your own reality. You only live once, so get out there and do it. And I know that might be privileged to say. Not everyone has a friend's father who is building a house at the right moment that lets you live there, right? And lets you change your career. Some people have, again, finances and all kinds of things, and it can be really, really tough. So maybe it comes from a place of privilege, but I really think that always try to look at every situation. I'm a hacker at heart, right? And to me, a hacker is someone who subverts the dominant paradigm, doesn't go along with what everyone else is doing, always questioning what's happening. We stop questioning things because you don't want to make decisions constantly. It's exhausting for our mental capacity. But it's the people who stop and think. I'm inspired by Nest, how when they came out before they got bought by Google, they like why do we have to? Yeah, why do we have learned helplessness with fire alarms? Well, we have to wave our hand and get the smoke away, right? Why can't we just use a motion detector and that stops? So I think just thinking, I'm inspired by I can't remember her name, but the woman who invented the wireless charging. Her story, how she's not an engineer, but she was able to come to first principles and figure out how to get to the fundamentals and invent wireless charging. So everyone's capable of that. I think it just takes reading Jim Collins, reading a little bit, educating yourself, but really asking yourself, is this where I want to be now or where can I be instead?
Well, I think there's a lot to be said for creating your own reality and even regardless of circumstances, I guess I'd push back on that a little. I mean, I know we all have different advantages that maybe make some things easier versus others, but I think the key differentiator probably across the board is relentlessness. You know, like if you are trying to create your reality, you're not going to accept um,
Mhm.
any other version of it. So, you keep pushing.
Yeah. Pushing everything you do and has to be part of your entire life. If you're catching a flight, like later today, I'm going to the Great Place to Work conference on a fly out. TSA lines, right? Which one's shorter? Get in the shorter line, right? Like optimize your time, take advantage of the situation that you're in, right? Don't ever let other people tell you how to live your life.
And so, how do you see that playing out in other parts of your life? This reality creation.
Wow, that's really a good question. I don't know. I think it maybe touches on you want to have high standards. You want to have high standards of the people you spend time with, the people you date and marry, the place that you live. I love that speech, commencement speech by what was his name? But just the idea of do not if you wake up too many days in a row and you cannot Steve Jobs. Oh my gosh, when he I don't know why I kept thinking about Tim Cook because he resigned today. He's going to be stepping down.
Mm,
But no, Steve Jobs said at the commencement speech, if you wake up wake up and look yourself in the mirror in the morning and you say, I'm not happy with where I am right now. Too many days in a row, it's time to make a change.
mm,
That can apply to any part of your life. And just not being afraid to step out into the unknown. I'm really inspired by my friend Noel, who I got him into software engineering because he was making his own music, but he was a dishwasher. And so he moved to San Francisco with $1,000 in his pocket and just made it work. He convinced somebody to let him job shadow them at a tech company. Just sat there and watch them. I don't know how he did it, but that may be extreme, right? But I think, again, mitigating risk, trying to do things without first just quitting your job. I'm going to quit my job. People can
mm.
make rash decisions. Don't make rash decisions. Be calculated in everything you do, but while continuing to move forward. My advisor told me that I have a whiteboard behind me. I put my calendar up, January, February, March, next row. Each quarter's a row. And then what are my goals? Meditation goals, finance goals, maybe relationship or family goals. But where do you want to be in December and work backwards? It's
Mhm.
so easy just forget all about that. Oh my gosh, it's now November and I didn't accomplish anything that I wanted to accomplish this year. Budgeting, you know, whatever you need to do to save for that trip you want to go on. Don't let life pass you by.
Oh, yeah, people used to ask me they were always so shocked about how much I traveled, and I said, "It's all about priorities." I don't make an amazing amount of money, at the time, and it was just about what do I prioritize, and you too can prioritize that, and I think it's a really good indication of what we do prioritize is, where we put our money and our time.
Hmm. Exactly. And we spend so much money on certain things that if we just maybe saved a few dollars a day in a year, that could be a trip. And that's how I think about that, just putting a little bit of money constantly. I'm, big on investing my money, making it grow. There's trading and then there's investing. People, unfortunately, never were taught in school how to be investors. You don't need to be a trader. No, don't need to day trade. You don't need to be buying individual stocks. You just need to make your money work for you. And I think that's really important too, because when people buy houses and boats, they're not buying it with their salary. They're buying it with their investments.
Mm. And so when you look at the path you took in making this leap, it sounds like the outcome was a bit mixed. It sounded like you guys had some success, but ultimately it didn't endure. So how do you frame the outcome and what are kind of the highlights that you would pull out from that experience?
Well, my main hobby, I guess I am a bit of a risk taker, but again, it's all mitigated risk is I do certain types of rock climbing and I just see myself doing this, other people doing this where they don't climb the route that they were out there to do. They weren't successful. And they're feeling bad about themselves. And let's just take a step back and say, hey, you got up, you got out here and you did it. You didn't just stay home and veg, right? We had another business earlier in my 20s. I partnered with some Amazon guys. We started a dating app, and one of the guys insisted on it being called MyZog, which we all hated and then we quit. But it could have been really, really successful because it was the right time, right place, and we were having initial traction. A lot of people were signing up. It's an interesting space, the dating experience, especially in the mid 2000s when there was pretty much like plenty of fish and then there's match at the time.
Mhm.
I feel bad about that, but I'm happy that I was there. I'm happy that I was invited into the team because I was really green at the time. I was happy to be there at all and to experience that and to work with those guys. And we tried rather than not just trying, rather than just, climbing the corporate ladder. I always think of how can I jump the corporate ladder, right? Rather than climbing, I want to just literally jump. I want to fly up it. And I think that's what's powerful about when you do quit a job or maybe you or laid off or whatever, one door closes, but another opens.
Mm.
And take advantage of that by being a consultant, being a thought leader. I love Tim Ferriss's book. I think we've all read it now, 4-day work week, how to become an expert, read a number of books and then start writing about it, and you can actually pay people to get you on webinars or podcasts or whatever you need to do. And then use that in your next career. Look what I did. I was a thought leader, right? Oh my gosh, we need to hire this person, right? Rather than just another resume. So it can be really very powerful to jump in career that way. And, I love how my teammates have been staying with me for many, many years, but they do find that if you don't want to change roles too often, right? But a mix of it can be very powerful for your finances. And
And so did you take any specific insights from your time, at the mobile app company into Recognize?
definitely, I took a number of lessons out of it. Again, it's what works well, double down on that, and we've done that successfully.
Well, let me actually pause you right there then, or if you're thinking, how do you measure what's working well? Is it just a revenue number? Is it a margin number? Like, how are you tracking on what to double down on?
Yeah. Well, it usually is obvious. Like for instance, with Recognize, after reading, Zero to One by Peter Thiel, he talks about partnering with eBay, and that was his way to get PayPal to grow. So we partnered with Yammer, which was in the same building that we were in Microsoft, in San Francisco. And so I put a lot of effort into integrating into Yammer in ways that no one else could possibly even think about because we built a browser extension to make that happen. And then we were just getting so many leads that featured us. So I did exactly what I did with the mobile business. We got featured, right?
Mm.
It's such a game changer to get featured or have a celebrity mention you or whatever you need to do to get out there. I'm really inspired by the story of Fubu, right? The clothing company from the 90s is really baggy, big, urban clothing. But he camped outside LL Cool J's house until LL Cool J finally let him in. And he took a photo of LL Cool J wearing the jeans, put an ad out, boom, blew up. What's his name? He's on Short Tank. I'm trying to remember his name. But so it's all about those partnerships early on. And so with us, seeing all the leads we got for free from Yammer's store and then, Outlook store. They were bought by Microsoft. So we just fully integrated into Microsoft. And for many, many years, I wouldn't say it's true today, but having a strategic advantage, being the only shop in Microsoft for an engagement suite. People don't want to have another tab in their browser, another app. They want to integrate it. So that's been really, it's just obviously really good for us. And I think with the mobile apps we had, a lot of them were bringing in, trickles of money, but then one was a huge amount of money. So obviously I should have doubled down on that. But we didn't, and then that was the demise of our business. So I think usually, it's pretty obvious. There's that book. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it's by the founder of 37 Signals or Basecamp. And he says, the most important things you won't need to write down. You'll just know them because they'll come up so much. I know it's good to be systematic and data driven and more now than ever because AI can just automatically summarize your data, keep great notes. You're just going to be better with AI. But oftentimes it's as simple as just your gut telling you this is a good idea. It can be as simple as that.
Okay. And what would you say then if somebody was facing a similar decision like you were in, where they do maybe have this insight around what the future might look like and might have an opportunity to jump out and make a leap?
I would start, you can do so much now with things like Replit. You can build your own apps. You don't have to be technical. One of my sales guys built a call analyzer tool in a few days. And if you wanted to, you probably could put a subscription on it and sell it. So it's never been a better time. If you see an opportunity, start playing with it, start trying to get some data on it, either pay for a survey or Meta ads are incredible. I don't think people may realize how powerful meta ads are, how you can target very specific demographics, certain cities. I'm exploring other possibilities, other apps where it is city based. And so, which city drives the most revenue? Like you can run experiments. You don't even have to have any product. You just need to have AI build you a landing page, hook up MailChimp to it. It's a lot easier than people think. I think that's the biggest problem. People are afraid to get started. Once they get started, they'll realize how easy it is.
Mm.
More now than ever. I mean, you don't even have to even know JavaScript or program anymore.
Yeah, I discovered Replit last month, and that just kind of blows my mind. I haven't gone in and played with it more yet, but yeah, the capabilities, like you said, you don't even have to be able to code to be able to create stuff. So there's a
You
lot
just
of opportunity to experiment and iterate and look for signals that you might be on the right path.
I think, yeah, sorry, I almost cut you off there. I just, I'm really passionate about, having a whiteboard, putting on some goals. I know it after a long week, it can be really tiring to, put more at work into something in the evenings or in the mornings or on the weekends. But if you're having to look for, if you have a job and you're looking for a job, or if you are looking for a job, you know how much work it already is. So before, it's just so, like you said, traveling, it's so freeing to be able to have a small business. And I encourage everyone to at least try at some point. So on your deathbed, you can say, I tried. But don't set yourself up for failure. Put a couple hours in every few days instead of, just hanging out, watching TV all weekend or watching movies, vegging out. Put some time into trying to learn a new skill or creating a new product. It doesn't always have to be about money. It could be something that you're passionate about. I know people who have made businesses out of just out of pottery and things like that. It doesn't have to be a technology business. And you'll know when it's right when people are telling you, "Hey, can I buy one of those?" Like, that's oh, maybe I got something. I mean, I got something here. But there's gonna be a lot of naysayers. People always will try to, oh, why are you doing that? Are you still drying that? Are you still doing that? When I was early days of Recognize, the company holiday, my family holiday parties. Are you still doing that thing? Or some of my friends, is it still just you and Peter? And now it's like, no, we're seven figures now,
Mm,
and I've hired some of the family members, and so it's like, hey, thanks for hiring
yeah.
the conversation changes. So you just got to believe in yourself.
Yeah. Business ownership can actually touch a lot of lives, so it can do a lot of good. Well, Alex, this has been a fun conversation. I'd love to hear what's like one thing you want people to take away from what we've discussed.
Well, yeah, coming back to just creating your own reality, not being complacent, questioning everything, and avoid learn helplessness.
Okay. And if listeners want to follow your work or learn more about what you do, where would they do that?
Yeah, so it's Recognize, spelled as you expect, normal spelling. Recognize, just Google us or recognizeapp.com. You can find me on LinkedIn as Alex Grande, and it's easy.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks a lot, Jana. It's been a
Mm.
lot of fun.
And to our audience, make the decision, act on it, be accountable, and until next time, stay unstoppable.